Tonight, we venture into the classified corridors of North American aerospace defense, where silence speaks louder than words. Since 1958, NORAD has stood sentinel over our skies, tracking every movement, every signal, every shadow that dares to cross our airspace. Most nights pass without incident. Routine flights, predictable patterns, the comfortable rhythm of controlled aviation. But then there are the other nights, the nights when something appears that doesn't belong. No transponder, no flight plan, no explanation. Welcome to the NORAD Files, where we examine the incidents that slipped through the cracks of official explanation, documented by the very systems designed to protect us, yet never fully understood. The Arctic night at Thule Air Base, Greenland, stretches endlessly, a darkness so complete it seems to swallow time itself. Inside the radar facility, Technical Sergeant Raymond Hollers watched his console with practiced detachment. After thousands of uneventful hours, the routine had become meditation. Until AO 213 hours, when everything changed. A single return materialized on the northern edge of his scope. Altitude, 95,000 feet. Direction, southwest across the polar cap. At first it resembled atmospheric interference, a ghost echo born from temperature shifts. But this one didn't behave like a ghost. It sharpened, it moved, it demonstrated control. "Bring that up on high resolution," Hollers commanded, leaning closer. The enhanced display revealed something impossible. A small, coherent, reflective trace. Nothing like clutter or aurora scatter. The object appeared, held steady for seconds, vanished, then reappeared 40 nautical miles farther south along a perfectly linear track. The computer automatically flagged it. Uncorrelated track 82TH. Hollers reached for the phone. "Sir, this return isn't ballistic," he reported to the command post. "And it's not orbital." His words became the first line in a mystery that would span decades. Within minutes, Cheyenne Mountain confirmed the reading wasn't a glitch. Thule's radar was among the most stable in the network, and the signal carried every characteristic of a metallic body: steady amplitude, constant phase, no scintillation. This was real. The object reappeared at 025, still climbing, still impossibly fast. Estimated velocity, 4,000 knots. In 1982, nothing airborne moved that fast at that altitude. Then North Bay, Ontario reported in. Their long-range radar had captured a faint echo along the same corridor, appearing at precisely the right time and location. 2 independent radar sources. Same impossible object. Then came confirmation from space itself. DSP-9, a Defense Support Program satellite in geosynchronous orbit, recorded optical flashes at the exact coordinates. Not heat, there was no thermal signature, but reflected light. The pulses aligned with the radar track within miles. A senior analyst's voice cut through the comm system. "We've got triple source confirmation. At 0222, the object did something that would haunt radar operators for years. After traveling at over 4,000 knots, the velocity reading dropped to 0, instantaneously. The object stopped in midair at 102,000 feet, an altitude where barely any atmosphere exists, where nothing can hover, where the laws of aerodynamics cease to apply." Hollers stared at his screen. "Nothing stops at 100,000 feet." He whispered. "Nothing." One sweep it was there, sharp and well-defined. The next sweep, gone, not descended, not departed, simply ceased to exist on every sensor simultaneously. The room fell into stunned silence as they logged the final coordinates. Whatever had crossed the polar cap that night had touched 3 of the continent's most advanced detection systems and offered nothing that could be explained. A controlled, dark shape, moving across the roof of the planet, seen by radar, glimpsed by satellite, and remembered by the few who watched it appear and disappear in the Arctic night. The humid summer air over Virginia's mid-Atlantic coast carried the weight of evening as commercial flights traced familiar paths northward toward Washington. At NORAD's long-range radar stations, the night shift settled into comfortable routine until 2042 local time, when something uninvited entered American airspace. A single primary return appeared at 30,500 feet, positioned precisely between two active civil air lanes. Initially dismissed as a transient echo, the kind that flickers and fades on warm summer nights, this one refused to cooperate. It held steady. It sharpened. It behaved like something solid, deliberate, and very real. The console flagged it automatically. Uncorrelated Track 91 LNG-02. What made this incident particularly unsettling was its proximity to civilian traffic. A commercial aircraft climbing out of Norfolk was approaching the same region of sky, separated vertically by less than 2,000 feet. The crew reported nothing unusual. No lights, no silhouette, no motion. To the human eye, the sky looked empty. But to military radar, the object was undeniably present. At 2043, a second radar source confirmed the contact. Minutes later, Wallops Island verified it as well. 3 radars on different bearings, different frequency bands, all tracking the same point in space. This was the moment controllers call hard correlation, when an unknown becomes undeniable. The FAA reported all active aircraft were broadcasting normally. No transponder malfunctions, no unresponsive aircraft, no unauthorized activity. The unknown return existed in a space where nothing should be. At 2053, the object executed a climb that changed everything. From 30,500 feet to 36,000 feet in one radar sweep, fewer than 12 seconds. That climb rate exceeded what typical civilian aircraft could achieve at that altitude, requiring afterburning fighter jets, not silent objects with no transponders, no contrails, and no visual signature. The East Coast Air Defense Sector prepared a scramble request. Langley Air Force Base maintained alert fighters specifically for moments like this. But before the intercept could be authorized, the object changed speed again, decreasing velocity by nearly a third, as if adjusting to maintain spacing with the Northern Air Corridor. Analysts noticed this immediately during reconstruction the following day. The object appeared to move with intention, not drift. It was pacing the corridor itself, not the aircraft within it. At 2103, the object vanished. Not faded, not moved beyond range, not descended. It simply ceased to exist between sweeps, the way a transponder disappears when switched off, except this object had none to begin with. Engineers began reconstructing the radar frames at dawn, revealing details invisible to live displays. The radar cross-section fluctuated slightly throughout the event, inconsistent with fixed-wing aircraft, but too controlled for tumbling debris. The fluctuations were rhythmic, suggesting orientation changes under intelligent control. Velocity data revealed a second anomaly. The object had slowed deliberately to maintain a near-parallel trajectory to the Dulles to Boston corridor for short intervals. It matched the corridor rather than the aircraft within it, behavior that defied conventional explanation. Over the following days, multiple agencies reviewed the case. The FAA confirmed no unidentified aircraft were present. NOAA confirmed no severe atmospheric conditions. Space Command verified no satellite debris aligned with the track. The NSA confirmed no unusual electronic emissions. The Navy confirmed all aircraft were grounded or accounted for. The NORAD Operations Division drafted their assessment with characteristic precision. Object exhibited structured return across 3 long-range radar systems. No IFF response, no ATC correlation. Velocity and altitude changes inconsistent with atmospheric or mechanical anomaly. No visual confirmation obtained. Source not attributed. Langley AFB's internal log contained a handwritten note that survived declassification. Scramble considered. Target faded before order executed. When redacted copies were released through FOIA in the early 2000s, nearly all details were removed. Only one brief line survived. Unknown radar target. No identification achieved. Inside NORAD's full archive, the event remains intact, cited occasionally in training sessions as an example of sensor correlation without visual confirmation. It bears similarities to other surveillance anomalies of the late 1980s and early 1990s: clean radar returns, silent behavior, sudden disappearance. For those who worked the consoles that night, the object remains memorable for its clarity. It appeared where nothing should have been, moved like something under control, stayed long enough for 3 radar stations to track it in detail, and left no trace for anyone on the ground or in the air. The Langley Corridor Track is remembered because its radar signature was unmistakably real, its behavior unmistakably structured, and because no correlation ever matched it to anything in the sky that night. Along the remote coastline of northern Labrador, the cliffs around Saglek Bay remained locked in winter frost. The North Warning System radar site, perched high above the shoreline, swept the dark Atlantic airspace with methodical precision. This was one of the quietest zones in the network. Commercial aircraft rarely ventured this far north, and military traffic was separated by thousands of miles. At 0116 Zulu, everything changed. A single return appeared at sea level off the Labrador coast. Initially resembling low-elevation interference, the sort of reflection that sometimes occurs when ocean surface temperature shifts, this echo did something unexpected. It sharpened immediately. The radar cross-section strengthened. The object rose slightly, then held position at an altitude so low it appeared almost level with the waterline. The system classified it as a low-confidence target and flagged it. Uncorrelated track Sag-01. A second sweep captured the same return, now drifting slightly north. The movement didn't match birds, boats, or atmospheric scatter. It was too coherent, too stable. Technicians checked environmental data. Surface winds were calm, no inversion layer present, visibility near perfect. Nothing supported a natural explanation. At 0118 Zulu, the object began to climb. What happened next startled every technician watching, from near sea level to over 10,000 feet in less than 30 seconds. Engineers would later write that the climb rate exceeded what any known aircraft, including high-performance fighters, could achieve from such a low starting point without a visible plume or thermal trace. By the next sweep, the object registered at 12,400 feet. The return was crisp and sharp, behaving exactly like a solid body under controlled propulsion. The system upgraded the track to medium confidence and sent an automated notification to North Bay. At 0120 Zulu, the long-range AN/FPS 117 radar at Hall Beach detected a faint return along the same vector. North Bay technicians confirmed both radar stations were detecting a single moving object that had ascended from near sea level to high altitude in under 2 minutes. The climb rate increased again. Between 0120 and 021 Zulu, the object rose from 12,400 feet to over 32,000 feet in one sweep. NORAD analysts later calculated the average vertical velocity as far beyond any conventional aircraft performance. The acceleration curve was smooth and uninterrupted, showing no signs of stall or aerodynamic limitations. At 0122, the North Warning System at Simutak Bay marked the object at 47,000 feet. By 0123 Zulu, it had passed 60,000 feet. Technicians recorded the altitude manually for verification. The climb was too steep to match natural phenomena and too consistent to match debris. No contrails were visible. No light signatures were reported. The sky was empty except for the small, silent point of radar reflection moving straight upward. NORAD Command at Peterson Air Force Base received a high-priority alert. The Operations Division initiated cross-sensor correlation, queuing DSP infrared satellites for potential confirmation. At 0124, Saglek Bay radar reported the object at 70,000 feet. The climb showed no signs of slowing. At 0124 and 48 seconds, DSP sensors returned data. The satellite did not register significant heat emissions, suggesting a cold body or one not producing thermal plume. However, a faint optical reflection was captured along the same vertical axis as the radar track, a straight line directly matching the radar position. At 0125, the object crossed 80,000 feet. At that altitude, the air is too thin for conventional aerodynamic lift. Any object climbing through that region requires rocket propulsion, ballistic trajectory, or high-altitude flight technology not publicly known. But the radar trace showed no ballistic arc. It was a vertical climb straight through the atmosphere. The object reached 92,000 feet. The data feed stabilized momentarily. For almost 5 full seconds, the return held consistent altitude. Then came the final reading. 98,000 feet. 1 second later, the return disappeared. Not drifted out of range. Not gradually faded. Vanished between sweeps. Technicians waited for another rotation, expecting a reappearance farther up the vector. Nothing returned. Saglek Bay technicians began immediate diagnostics. System calibration checked. Power stability confirmed. Weather sensors operational. The radar beam was clean. Hopedale conducted remote tests. No errors were identified. North Bay received the full data packet by 0200 Zulu. Their preliminary review concluded the event showed characteristics of a structured body ascending through controlled propulsion. The absence of thermal signature confused analysts. Even high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft leave traces under infrared detection. This object did not. By 0410 Zulu, NORAD issued an initial assessment. Event involved single track with extreme climb rate confirmed by 2 radar systems and supported by optical reflection from DSP. No aircraft, civilian or military, filed flight plans along Labrador coast. No weather balloons launched, no drones scheduled, no scientific payloads active in region. Radar engineers in North Bay reconstructed the acceleration curve. The object's initial ascent averaged over 8,000 feet per second during peak intervals. The motion was steady and controlled, not ballistic. The engineers concluded the object did not follow a parabolic trajectory. It was continuous ascent until termination. The Space Surveillance Network reviewed orbital tracks. No re-entry or orbital debris aligned with the Saglek Bay event. The absence of heat signature further eliminated re-entry bodies. No satellites maneuvered along that axis. No booster rockets had launched. No known military test activity occurred in the region. The final assessment was concise. Object exhibited structured radar cross-section, extreme vertical ascent from sea level to near space altitude, and confirmed optical reflection. Origin could not be correlated to any atmospheric, civilian, or military source. Event archived as North Warning Event Record 0411 SAG. Origin not determined. The plains of central Montana settle into profound darkness after sunset, a darkness that makes the landscape feel infinite. Rolling fields, scattered ranch roads, and the faint silhouettes of missile support structures form one of America's most sensitive defensive grids. In the late 1970s, this region housed a vast network of Minuteman missile silos controlled by Malmstrom Air Force Base, each silo isolated, hardened, and linked to underground control capsules staffed around the clock. Above this nuclear arsenal, NORAD's Western Air Defense Sector maintained constant vigilance. Most nights were predictable. Small civilian aircraft, occasional tanker traffic, distant curves of airliners moving between coasts. When something unusual appeared, operators examined it methodically. But nothing prepared them for the night, when 3 stationary radar returns positioned themselves directly over separate nodes of the missile field. Each return appeared at the same altitude, each held position without lateral drift, each reflected radar energy sharply like compact metallic craft. Stationary returns weren't unprecedented, but these didn't behave like clutter. They didn't sway or pulse like typical interference. The returns were steady, coherent, behaving like real aircraft, but with no transponder signals. Operators began checking diagnostics, recalibrating gain settings, performing confirmation tests. Every indicator showed perfect radar function. The three objects maintained their positions. The distances between them formed a rough triangular geometry across the missile field, each separated by dozens of miles, yet at identical altitudes within a narrow margin. The Western Air Defense Sector sent coordinates to adjacent radar stations for verification. Two separate long-range radars confirmed they were detecting the same three returns at identical positions. While NORAD verified these contacts, a surface-level patrol from one of the missile alert facilities radioed in. Security personnel reported seeing white-blue lights hovering in a triangular pattern above one of the isolated silos. The lights didn't blink like aviation strobes, they glowed steadily. The observers noted no sound, no visible structure behind the lights, no movement typical of helicopters. One security patrol member told his supervisor, "The lights are steady and bright, like they're fixed onto something." Inside the NORAD radar room, the three returns remained unchanged as operators continued cross-checking. Each reflected radar in narrow bands, consistent with metallic bodies roughly 10 to 20 meters across, too large for drones, too stable for balloons. The altitude readings were steady, and the separation between objects didn't shift. Then, without warning, all three moved laterally. The movement was sudden but smooth, as if guided by deliberate propulsion. The three objects maintained spacing relative to each other, forming a drifting triangular formation across the missile field. The transitions were synchronized, their headings consistent, their reflectivity unchanged. At the missile alert facility, ground observers saw the same shift. The lights glided smoothly together, then stopped again above different sections of the missile grid. The brightness didn't fluctuate wildly, but pulsed faintly, an effect often described in earlier Northern Tier sightings from the mid-1970s. Due to proximity to nuclear silos, procedures required immediate notification of Air Force Command. The Western Air Defense Sector relayed a situational summary to NORAD's Correlation Center. Though the objects displayed no hostile behavior, their presence over sensitive facilities triggered precautionary readiness. Fighters weren't launched because the objects remained largely stationary, showing no outward aggression. After hovering above the new positions, NORAD received further confirmation from adjacent radar sites. The returns remained stable on all readings. Altitudes matched precisely. The geometry of their formation held at uniform distances. Then the three radar returns began rising. Operators watched closely. The ascent was steady, vertical, and rapid. The formation remained intact, each return maintaining the same separation and altitude relative to the others. This type of ascent wasn't compatible with helicopters or fixed-wing aircraft. The climb rate exceeded typical aircraft performance at that altitude. On the ground, missile security personnel witnessed the ascent. The white-blue points of light rose upward, diminishing in apparent size until they became small, steady stars, then vanished completely. Several observers later recounted that the lights made no sound during departure, consistent with statements from Northern Tier incidents at Loring, Wurtsmith, and Grand Forks, all involving silent movement over strategic installations. Radar systems confirmed the disappearance. As objects rose beyond effective ceiling, returns gradually faded until they left scopes entirely. Operators logged final coordinates and documented overall duration, noting targets had been visible for considerable time. In following hours, NORAD analysts reviewed the data. Engineers examined radar logs for malfunction signs, but calibration checks showed normal performance throughout. Environmental data was reviewed in detail. no temperature inversions, no plasma ducting, no geomagnetic disturbances. Weather conditions were stable. Defense Support Program satellite data showed no infrared signatures matching any known aircraft or debris. Flight plans for the entire region were examined. No military or civilian aircraft were present. No training operations matched coordinates. No weather balloons were launched. The absence of correlated flight data strengthened classification as uncorrelated targets. The NORAD summary presented facts without interpretation. 3 radar returns detected at matching altitude over Minuteman missile sites, returns confirmed by multiple radar systems. Visual observations from ground security described white-blue lights in structured formation. Objects hovered, moved in formation, and ascended before disappearing. No system malfunction. No aircraft matched event. No identification achieved. The Malmstrom incident remained discreet, archived under its reference in the NORAD Western Air Defense Surveillance Log. The notation was brief and consistent with standard practice. No correlation achieved with known aircraft or atmospheric phenomena. Event recorded for reference. For those who worked the console that night, the memory was clear. The objects hadn't flickered or drifted as ground clutter does. They had held positions with precision, moved purposefully, and vanished with equal control. The northern horizon over Ellesmere Island existed in permanent twilight, the Arctic sun skimming the frozen sea. In an underground facility outside Thule Air Base, Greenland, NORAD's early warning radar tracked the familiar dance of commercial airliners and polar satellites. It was routine data, steady, predictable, familiar. Until the night of April 21, 2018, when the screen filled with something extraordinary. A cluster of 5 radar returns appeared just north of the Baffin Bay Corridor. Altitude 55,000 feet, traveling due west at 140 knots. The contacts held formation for nearly 3 minutes, then shifted south across the Canadian boundary at 78 degrees north. They carried no IFF transponder, no flight plan, no corresponding satellite track. NORAD's system automatically tagged the event. Track file group 1804 ARC-01, category uncorrelated target. At 2211 Zulu, detection was confirmed by the ANFPS 117 radar at Hall Beach, Nunavut, part of the North Warning System chain. A nearly identical return was simultaneously registered by the Alaskan NORAD region long-range radar at Cape Lisburne, over weird 800 kilometers away. The signals were sharp, coherent, and identical in spacing. A pattern of 5 points, moving in near-perfect alignment. Duty Officer Major Karen House at North Bay Control Center reviewed the correlation feed. The tracks were real, not interference, not scatter. Each echoed with the intensity of a small metallic aircraft. Within minutes, data reached NORAD Command at Peterson Air Force Base, Colorado, where the Operations Division issued a preliminary summary. Multiple radar tracks, consistent formation verified by 2 independent NWS sites. No associated flight or satellite correlation. But within an hour, more evidence arrived that would erase any doubt. At 2232 Zulu, the Defense Support Program DSP-21 satellite positioned in geosynchronous orbit detected faint infrared signatures along the same trajectory. 5 sequential points reflecting sunlight but emitting no measurable heat. The readings matched radar geometry precisely. For the first time in years, the entire NORAD sensor triad, ground radar, orbital infrared, and high-altitude tracking were simultaneously engaged on an unidentified source. The following morning, a message labeled NORAD SITREP ARC 2018-04 reached Ottawa's Department of National Defense and U.S. Northern Command. It described an anomalous formation of high-altitude radar and infrared returns transiting the Arctic Air Corridor from Baffin Bay to the Beaufort Sea. The report noted that each object's movement was steady. No erratic behavior, no bursts of acceleration. But unusual in one aspect. The The formation appeared to hold position relative to Earth's rotation for nearly 5 minutes before resuming westward motion. That would have required active control or propulsion. Within hours, CF-188 Hornet fighters from 4 Wing Cold Lake were scrambled north from CFB Yellowknife under Operation Noble Eagle Alert status. They reached the corridor at 0127 Zulu, but found clear skies, no contrails, no radar targets. Ground stations confirmed the unknowns had already vanished from scope. The intercept log read like a fragment of radio silence. Cold 1 flight. Negative contact. Copy negative. All returns faded. 0057. Maintain patrol. Over the next 48 hours, analysts replayed radar data frame by frame. North warning system sites at Clyde River, Hall Beach, and Cambridge Bay had all recorded identical echo signatures. 5 targets maintaining spacing of roughly 16 kilometers, reflecting energy consistent with metal objects 10 to 15 meters in diameter. Each target maintained constant heading and altitude within a 2% margin. The duration of contact, 46 minutes, eliminated meteor trails. Their linear motion ruled out auroral reflection. NORAD System Engineering Office confirmed the radar chain functioned normally. The Space Surveillance Network confirmed no orbital debris or re-entry coincided with tracks. Weather data ruled out the unusual. No temperature inversion, no geomagnetic storms. The sky had been pristine. At Cheyenne Mountain, technicians noticed a curious coincidence. The 5 radar tracks followed a line nearly identical to the old Dew-line communication relay route, decommissioned decades earlier. A classified note inside the Event 1804RC summary reads, "Pattern geometry parallels historic communications corridor. No authorized activity." On April 24th, 3 days after the event, Canadian Forces Station Alert, the world's northernmost military base, reported anomalous magnetic readings in the upper ionosphere. Fluxgate magnetometers recorded 2 micro-Tesla deviations lasting less than a minute, centered on 79 degrees north, 65 degrees west, precisely along the radar track. In early 2019, the Royal Canadian Air Force integrated new solid-state transmitters into the North Warning System. During calibration, engineers replayed archived data from April 2018 as test input. To their surprise, when reprocessed with updated signal filters, the 2018 radar frames revealed additional faint echoes. Not 5, but 7 distinct returns following the same linear vector. 3 had been too weak for detection under older analog settings. The discovery prompted a short technical addendum to the original case file, released in redacted form in 2021. Subsequent analysis of stored radar data identified 2 additional correlated returns associated with Event 1804ARC. All 7 objects maintained equal spacing and velocity. Source remains unverified. That became the final word. After 2019, no comparable detection occurred along that corridor. The Arctic remained silent until 2023, when NORAD once again intercepted unidentified objects over Yukon and Alaska, events which analysts compared directly to the 2018 file. The Arctic Corridor incident is remembered within NORAD's archives not for what it revealed, but for what it demonstrated. Even with full integration of radar, satellite, and magnetic instrumentation, the system could still observe but not identify phenomena within its own skies. Every process functioned flawlessly. Every sensor confirmed. Yet the result remained the same. Surveillance Event number 1804ARC, multi-radar and orbital detection confirmed, no IFF, no heat emission, no flight correlation, event archived, origin not determined. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, remember that somewhere above the Arctic ice, 7 objects once moved in perfect formation through our most closely watched skies. They were seen by our best technology, confirmed by our most advanced sensors, and chased by our fastest interceptors. Yet they remain, as they were that April night, completely unexplained. silent witnesses to the persistent truth that our skies hold mysteries even our most sophisticated systems cannot solve. Sleep well, knowing that somewhere, someone is watching. And sometimes, something is watching back.